Hey, this is John with Hidden Highways. Going to show you, I'm in the early stages of my van build, but what I'm doing now is trying to get some electricity going. For a feature presentation, it's how to install a battery isolator in your van the easy way. Or, let's think of a better title, how to install a battery isolator without cutting any vehicle wires. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Or, how to attach the isolator to a true ignition source without cutting any wires. Okay, yeah, that's actually more accurate. That's more what this is going to really be. So, just so you know, Into the Mystery 13, Jed already has a really good video about installing isolators, but there's one part that he did that I thought could be done easier, so that's mostly what this video is going to be about. And it's going to be about the step about attaching the true ignition source differently is what it's going to be, which I think is, I think my method could actually be a lot easier for a lot of people. Okay, and because one reason why that is because it doesn't require taking out the fuse box and doesn't require cutting any wires. So first, let's just review how an isolator works and why you'd even want a battery isolator. Here's a problem. Let's say you want to charge your auxiliary battery in the back, okay, for your fan, lights, whatever you have in your van. You know, some vans are more simpler than others. Some have a lot of stuff. Well, a good way of doing it one way is to actually use the alternator that's already attached to your vehicle. So you might just think of doing it this way. So you just attach it in parallel here and then hook the batteries parallel. So it'd kind of like be the equivalent of just attaching not a starter cable, jumper cables between the two. But obviously that wouldn't work too good if you're driving. So, you know, you'd have some kind of wire that comes underneath and then make sure the back is grounded as well. And then what would happen is when the engine's on, things would work fine, okay, and you'd actually be charging both the auxiliary and the starter battery, so everything would be awesome. And then what happens though, the only problem though is if you go now and you do it while the engine's off instead, what happens is now you're draining the starter battery as you're taking energy out of the current is flowing into your light, fan, etc. Current is actually going to be flowing from both the auxiliary battery and the starter battery, and so you know what you don't want to do so what happens is it'll just start draining both batteries over time, just all depending on how much stuff you ran that night and so forth. But but if you leave it on long enough or run enough stuff, it'll go down till eventually both batteries will be dead, and so that's not good, especially if you're out in the desert or something, because this means you can't start your van. So that wouldn't actually be good anywhere. And so one solution might be to, let's say, you see that X I drew there, would be just to find some way to break the connection and just make sure you break the connection each time that you're not running the engine with either a switch or manually taking the cable off. But either way, that would be kind of a pain, but at least it would keep you from getting stranded because your fan might go out in the middle of the night, but at least you wouldn't be stranded because your starter battery wouldn't start. So, but manually disconnecting the wire each time is a pain, so luckily there is a better way of doing that. Enter Mr. Battery Isolator. So you see we have the thing is almost the same, our diagram is almost the same as before, but now we have the battery isolator there, and we also see that we have this true ignition source that's hooked up to the battery isolator, and we'll explain what that true ignition source is a little bit later. So what happens is now that once the true ignition source becomes live and you have current flowing from your true ignition source wire into that battery isolator, then it goes like this. Now it actually happens very quick, probably within a split second, but as soon as that goes through it, then it flips a switch in that battery isolator, and now it allows current to flow through as before whenever the engine's on, okay? And then when the engine turns off, now it stops, okay, which is good. So what it does then is whenever the true ignition source is off, the switch is open and the two batteries are isolated, hence the clever name battery isolator. And so a true ignition source, what it is, it's a wire that's only live when the key is in the running position. That's like all the way forward. And now I'll just describe how to hook up the true ignition source to the isolator. And you can look up the rest of the steps in Jeb's video, but this will just show you how to do a little bit easier method, I believe, for doing the true ignition source. So This is what most battery isolators look to. You have cables on both sides, and then you have the wire on the bottom to the true ignition source, which is the one we're going to talk about. So what you want to do under Jeb's method, in the usual method, is you find a wire that only comes on when the keys are running position, and that can actually be kind of hard sometimes. And then you cut into this wire, and then you attach a wire between that wire and the small screw on the true ignition source screw on your battery isolator, and then of course you have the other small screw attached to the ground. And this isn't super hard, but it's still kind of a pain, and you do have to remove. The way I've seen Jed do it was he was having to remove the fuse box as well, so that that looked like a pain too. So I mean, this anyway, there's an easier way. So what I do is instead I attach this end of the wire to a fuse tap box, and so that's the fuse tap on top, and then that's where I attach it. That bottom arrow is where things change, where now I have it attached to this fuse tap. I have this wire attached to this fuse tap instead, and this gets put into the fuse box. And that's actually what the fuse tap looks like. So this is a fuse so you take your fuse out, and then you put the original fuse into this one here for the original device, and you put another fuse into this spot, and this will be the fuse for that still is going to control. That's going to blow if the original device uses too much current, and this is going to be the fuse that's going to blow if the isolator were to use too much current, but it shouldn't use much current at all because it's just a simple switch, but that's what it's for. So okay, so this is a little basic idea of what the fuse tap looks like. It's sort of somewhat of a schematic and sort of a little bit of a picture, but so basically the slot goes in here, and then and I believe the direction will matter. So if you get a situation where you put it in, you get no reading from your voltmeter either direction, then you want to probably flip it around. It was a little unclear for me online whether or not the direction really matters on it. But anyway, so this is your fuse up here for going to the isolator, the fuse for the slot. And so you find the fuse that you think will only come on when the key is turned on, okay? And then you replace the fuse with the fuse tap in each slot. Oh, and by the way, one limiting factor might be when you look for that fuse, you might have a couple different candidates for ones that you think would become devices that would only become live whenever the switch is turned all the way forward. Like the one I ended up finding was the one for the AC clutch, and I think that's what Jed found too. But the problem too is you can see that these fuse boxes here, there's all this junk here. So in these things are a little bit big and they kind of take up some room. So it might be kind of hard finding a spot to where you might have some fuse slots that would work for this, but then where it wouldn't actually fit in there. So that's a problem too. So something to think about. And but anyway, so you replace the fuse with the fuse tap. Then you attach your voltmeter between. Okay, yeah, this box is supposed to be a voltmeter. Okay, I know. Anyway, between the wire of the isolator then the ground. Okay, and okay, so you do that. You test and see if there's voltage when the key's in different positions.
Looking at it, AC clutch, that sounds like something, okay, obviously this should only be on when the engine's running, but, since it's also controlled by some kind of switches and relays and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I thought there was a chance that maybe that this could still be live, that this still has a potential of current to flow through it, even if the engine was off, because there's some other kind of switch that hasn't come on. So I thought, really, until I tried it experimentally, I didn't know 100% for sure if this is going to work. So let me just go ahead and take that fuse out of there. This is a little hard to get in here. Let's see. Okay. Well, that's not really. Okay, so it's in there now. So the first thing I would want to do is just, before I do anything else, is make sure that the air conditioner is still working. You have a compressor spinning for that. Okay, so I can go ahead and turn that off now. If this indeed only comes on, this fuse tap thing, if indeed this wire, because the key is to have this wire become only live when the switch is turned all the way forward, so when it's on. That'd be good enough if I don't shake the car too much. And then this other one, I found that this was an okay source for a ground. This little spot here, it's not the best, but just right here, just for some place where it'll stay in. Okay, so I'm looking at the voltmeter right now, and you can see it's reading 000 as expected, okay? I think it pretty much, when you turn it backwards, it only turns the radio on, okay? 000, okay? Alright, so now I'm going to turn it. Okay, so this is the position the engine is on when it's running, okay? So, okay, there we go, something like 12 volts.
whenever you find that the cases, that after you put this tap in there, that you only have a live wire whenever you're in the running position, and then you know you're good.
Okay, so I ran this cord outside this box. I put a little notch down there so I could run this, and then I got it attached to this. If I have the key in the off position and I put the 2 electrodes between these 2 points here, and then I use the ohm meter, I get nothing happens. But now if I turn it backwards into the position for the radio, it still doesn't do anything. But then when I turn it into the running position, it does close the circuit, and then the ohm meter does go off. And now I can put a battery cable on this side, a battery cable on this side, and then run that back to my battery that's in the back.